It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in the Fanzine Friday series. Today we're wrapping up our look at Illusionist Vision with Illusionist Vision number 3. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, we take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. This week, that's Illusionist Vision number 3, the last one of these that I have. I'm pretty sure it's the last one that they made. This is done by Mike Ferguson, Gavin Denton, and he doesn't have a date on this one, but based on the commentary, I'm thinking this one slipped over into the early part of 1979. Hope you enjoyed the video. Okay, we're back looking at Illusionist Vision number 3, as I said, from, I believe, early part of 1979. This is the traditional size we're used to. It's heavy stock cover, folded in half, stapled through the middle. Illusionist Vision number 3, like I said, I think the beginning of 1979. This is the product of Mike Ferguson and Gavin Denton, as well as art in all of these has been provided by Michael Watts. They also say that this time we have some art in here from Phil Alexander. So we'll try to take a look at that here in just a second. Here's the cover art. This is Michael Watts again, and we'll blow this one up so you can see it a little better. I love this. If you stop and take a look at how big that sword is, it's like if this guy is a human and he's 6 feet tall, his sword is 15 feet long or something like that, I think, if it were to scale. But in any event, he must be very strong because he's got the momentum going, and it looks like he's going to chop this little dragonette creature in half. So this is very similar to the art we've seen from Mike Watts before. Here's the editorial. It's very short this time. He just basically mentions how they were behind schedule, but he's all cut up and says, don't worry, I guarantee Illusionist Vision number 4 is coming out by October of this year. It's almost ready to print now, he says. But unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that never happened. And unfortunately, this one didn't continue because I thought that these guys were doing a really good job. Here's our table of contents. He did have one here as well. It's a short table of contents, even though the fanzine itself is a pretty decent size. It's a couple pages shorter than the last one. His fiction continues. This is a 3-part story, which unfortunately, again, we don't get the end of. He's still sort of winding up the story this time, or warming up the story into the part where it starts to get really good. We start to learn what's going on in this one. The Mage's Sack are new magical items. 2 adventures this time, the Keep of Quanol and a Christmas design, which we'll say more about in a minute. And then the Monster March, which is, of course, new monsters. Our contributors, Mike Ferguson, Gavin Denton, put this together. Mike's the driving force. Michael Watts is an artist, of course, and he has most of the art here. And also it says they have some art in here from Phil Alexander. And then some contributions from Brian Henstock, Jason Blake, Mark Johnson. Mostly those are in the monster section. There might be one other thing that they did. So we'll mention those when we go along. Let's talk about the Mage's Sack, the new magical items. I thought these were quite good this time. Gauntlets of Extension is a fantastic one. All kinds of potential uses for it. Is that you usually find just one, left or right hand, and when you put it on, the wearer can see this hand anywhere from 10-20 feet out, and you can telekinetically control where this phantasmal hand is. It's otherwise invisible to anyone else unless they can see invisible. And whatever you do with your hand that's wearing this glove or gauntlet, the other hands will do with your exact same dexterity. So a thief could use it to open a lock from a distance. You could knock on a door, open a door, etc., assuming you have enough strength to manipulate the object. Up to 50 gold pieces in weight, it says. A holy sword of undead control. I like this. It's similar to ones we've seen in some of the other fanzines. It's a holy sword +3/+5 versus undead. Perfectly made for a paladin, allows him to turn undead as if he's a cleric of the same level that he is a paladin. They say they actually come in 3 different alignments. His obviously would have to be lawful. Could be neutral, could be chaotic. Any other fighter who holds it who isn't a paladin gets some ability. It says as to 1/3 your level, and then it tells you if you're the same alignment as the sword. Otherwise, it doesn't give you any extra abilities, just +3 to hit. If you're a lawful fighter, it's 1/3 your level would be your cleric level for turning. If you're neutral, no turning ability, but you're immune from any level draining abilities of the undead. And if you're chaotic and the sword's chaotic, then you get control undead instead of turning undead. The next one's called the Book of Requisite Change. I don't know if they meant just purely like stat change, because it says you can change one requisite on a 2-to-1 ratio with another. So, you know, you could lower, well, so if it's prime requisite, then I'm not sure how you do that, because you'd probably be taking away from one thing you need to get to another, and you might lose your class ability, depending on how your DM rules on that. But I think they just mean stat change, and what it's going to let you do when you read it is pick one stat and pick another stat, and you get, for every 2 points you take off of the one stat, you can add one to a stat. So like, let's say you're a fighter, had a 10 intelligence, you could take 4 points off of your intelligence, give 2 points to your strength. His suggestion is there's no upper limit on how high it can go. You obviously can't lower anything worse than a 3. And it says normally it's only enough to let you read one time, but for whatever reason, he says, but in some cases they've been found with as many as 4 sort of readings in there you could do. So that's up to the DM, obviously. Smelling salts, normally, so it has sort of 2 purposes. Normally, if you just put the smelling salt under someone's nose, then they basically cough for 1 to 10 millirounds. But if you put it under someone who's asleep, including magically asleep, unconscious, or paralyzed, it'll revive them instantly, even though they still have to roll 1 to 10 for rounds of coughing, which causes some, you know, I think a DM would give them some slight negatives on skill checks or to hit checks. Then there's a magical alchemical teaspoon, and you put it in water and you stir it, and it'll randomly generate a potion up to 5 times, and then it just becomes a nice copper spoon. Charcoal sticks, a little bundle up to 10 wrapped up, and you pull 2 of these sticks together and rub them. It'll spark, and then if you know what you're doing, you would set them down. They're going to create a wall of flame, and it's a one-use event. So if you had 10, you can only do it 5 times, but it bursts up a wall of flame as if an 8th level magic user. The magic draining sword just looks like a +1 sword until you figure out what it's doing, but it says essentially it will absorb spells up to D100 level. So you'd roll I would do it this way. I'd roll D100 to see exactly how many charges it could absorb. First level spell absorbs 1, 5th level spell absorbs 5, etc. It also says, extremely powerful, if this sword hits an enchanted monster, then it pulls the monster into the sword, essentially, like it was a spell, and you know, it's trapped there or sent back to its plane of existence, but it sort of cancels it out. It says other than the golem, which I think is a prime material plane enchanted monster. The Ring of Vision looks like a normal vision, but and so you can't detect magic or identify it through magical means, but it does, if you wear it, it gives you true sight. And then we have the Cursed Ring, which does nothing except for it can't be removed unless you want to use, you know, remove curse, wish, or cut your finger off. But the downside is this ring won't come off, and therefore you can't wear any other magic ring on that hand, right? Because there's generally that rule you can have 1 on each hand, so it sort of takes up one of your slots. So it's pretty minor but good annoyance kind of cursed item. The Flaming Stone is is a sharpening stone for a weapon, and it says up to 10 times. But when you sharpen it, then the item, usually a sword, will burst into flame for 10 millirounds, so you get the bonus damage from a flame. So you could do it like if you had a planned attack, I think would be a good use. And then the counterpart, because he likes to do a lot of the good thing, bad thing items, is the Whetstone, W-E-T, and it says whenever you use it, there's a 50% chance that the next time you try to use your sword, it sort of just flops over like a noodle. I don't know, that's getting a little funky for me, but I like this sort of counterbalanced one if you come up with some interesting bad reaction that could occur. Okay, next we have our first adventure. It's a really good one. The Keep of Quanol, I'm going to say. This one will probably take you a couple of sessions, or a really long session, depends on how fast your guys move and how long you're playing that day. So first we have a keep, and this is basically a bunch of humans and bandits are in this keep, with a few exceptions, and they've taken up residence. And then there's doors down there's a second level up in the keep, but then you go down and you go into a dungeon. And I really like the dungeon. It has different monsters in sort of clusters. So you've got some really classic. You've got troglodytes, you've got bugbears, you've got some undead, and you've got some bad humans like evil priests in there, as well as a couple other little things. You have a little group of kobolds, and if you make it all the way out here to the exit, which is a cave exit, that apparently you can't find your way into, only out of, you encounter a very young dragon. So it's got sort of all the bases covered, right, for classic D&D. Well, I should say he mentions in his lead-in, right, that AD&D is out, that it's really popular now, and it's his thought that next time, unfortunately there wasn't a next time, but next time he was going to switch over to sort of a more AD&D focused fanzine instead of D&D focused. All right, Monster March, cause you can never have too many monsters. These are really good this time. The Artidorm by Mark Johnson is essentially a basilisk-looking creature, but it doesn't have the eye paralyzation. It bites you with a poison, and that poison sort of congeals you internally. And so you make a failed saving throw, you have the effect of a slow spell, and every 5 rounds you have to make another save, and every time you fail, you're like slowed by half. So you remember from math class how that sort of gets worse and worse and worse. At some point you might get extremely slow. You can cast neutralize poison, slow poison to help you out with that. Then we have this little cat up here, and he's like a Cheshire cat with an oversized head on purpose, but he has really nasty teeth, and he's got a really weird phenomenon that if you hit him with an edged weapon, he takes the damage, but he gains 4 hit points. So you might do 10, he gains 5, so net of 6, right? And his armor class improves. Now it says maximum hit points, he can never go above 25, he can never get better than a 0. But I sort of like this idea that you keep hitting him and he keeps sort of getting stronger, for at least to some extent. Could sort of drive a party crazy trying to figure out how to take him out. And if you happen to use him, blunt weapons, then he doesn't get that sort of bonus power up. Down here at the bottom, and get out of the way, you see this little, it's a cloud, and it's called the Bewilder Beast, and it's a cloud that rolls around seeking wisdom. And it drains wisdom from characters. So it gets around, if it can get a hit, that means it's swarmed around this character's face, and it will stay there. Every round increases, you have to roll percentile dice, 5%, then 10, then 15, as it becomes more and more likely to asphyxiate you. It does a little bit of damage, but fortunately for you, it takes damage without even having to have magical weapons, and so maybe you can kill it before it suffocates or kills your character. The tiger fly is basically a man-sized bee or hornet, and it often carries a shield and magical weapons, so it's sort of anthropomorphic, and its poison does 3d8 damage, and also paralyzes you if you fail your save. At least it doesn't kill you, I guess. And then, horrible thing that it'll do, it will lay eggs in your abdomen, and his larvae will come out and eat you to get nutrition, right? So that's obviously a bad deal. And here are the larvae. That's the next monster down at the bottom. And these larvae are exactly what you would expect. They're about 5 feet long. The body, he actually says, is armor class 12, so we don't really have that in the rules. So I guess maybe just give everybody a armor class 10 and a +2 to hit or something, right? So super squishy unless you hit the head and beak area of them. It's armor class 3. So pretty easy to kill, but number 10 to 100, so there could be a lot of those things to try and take care of. If they do bite you and they roll a 20, they sever one of your random limbs. Maybe, I don't know, you could roll for the head too, but at least arm, leg. So that's a pretty scary, that'd be a way to make something that's relatively easy to kill a little bit more scary, right? The Paper Golem by Mike Ferguson. It looks like paper mache walking around, but it says like all golems, the enchantment makes it only hit by magical weapons, so this paper-looking thing can be really hard to kill. Most magic doesn't do much of a damage. Fireballs only do 1 die per level. a lightning bolt just basically frees it for a round. I guess you sort of short it out or something like that. So 55 hit points, armor class 5, pretty tough monster for lower level. Next we have the 6-armed 2-foot tall monkey ape called the Shrell, and super dexterous, and if he can, often companion, they say, for magic users, especially chaotic magic users, and if they can, obviously they use their dexterity and they get a hold of you. And also their claws have a poison in there that will cause hyper nervous activity, and so you sort of have a paroxysm, shaking, gibbering, and unable to fight. So that's their good offense is a good defense kind of thing. Next is the Hugbear by Brian Henstock. The Hugbear looks like a bugbear, but it's large, and if it gets a hold of you, it hits you, it can hug you for 3d8 damage of crushing damage. Back to Mike Ferguson, the Insincerity, which looks like a little bit like an otter, but has the ability to polymorph itself into basically any size monster, any size or type of monster at once, and so it typically tries to pick a very fearsome monster that will scare the party. It has limited ESP, so you can give it a little bonus to know what your party might not be good against or afraid of from prior encounters, and he polymorphs into this thing and then demands your gems because he likes shiny gems, and that's basically what he's going to do. If you actually figure it out or just attack him anyway and hurt him, he'll polymorph back, and then he'll pull out whatever gems he has and try to bargain for his life. And I said typically he eats anything that's worth much, so he has 1 to 4 worth 10 gold pieces each is all he's going to have to offer the party. Next we have the Baticore, like Manticore but a bat, by Brian Henstock, and 10 to 40 appearing, 2 hit dice monsters, and basically they're bat size, but they have spikes like a Manticore on their tail, and they will obviously fly up out of range, hopefully anything but a bow or a crossbow, and then they will shoot the spikes at you, try to hit you. And then finally we have the Spook, which is a fairly incorporeal undead. Looks a little bit like a shadow, if you will, but has a mace that can that hardens up enough to do actual damage, 1d6 plus 1. And like most undead, you can turn them like a wraith, but they're immune to a number of spells. Every time he hits you, he says no saving throw. You're hit with a fear spell that will cause, in this case, causes you to lose 1d6 points of dexterity for 2d4 rounds. And if you ever get to 3 or below, then you've lost the ability to sort of control yourself, and you're going to be basically trembling in fear on the ground. So that's it for the Spook. Okay, so the Christmas dungeon, and he mentions this was supposed to come out before Christmas, but it's after, but people told him, his friends told him he should leave it in, so he did. This is sort of a rescue Santa Claus theme, and so you've got some gnomes and some elves and some reindeer, including one with a red nose, a white dragon that is kept as a pet to freeze the floor, so to keep a skating rink available for the elves to play on. So it's a little bit silly. And then you get to the end and you defeat the evil magic user who used to work with Santa but decided to take over the North Pole, or this dungeon workshop. And if you defeat him, then you can find Santa Claus who's tied up and you can rescue him. So it's it's fun, silly. It's a good thematic dungeon if you wanted to have to do something fun with your friends around the Christmas holiday. So this is from the last episode, and I just wanted to circle back, because you'll remember he started these 2 competitions. They apparently have just disappeared or gone by the wayside. We never got to find out what the winner was for the Stat This Monster contest, and so in honor of the guys who made this great fanzine for us, Illusionist Vision, Mike Ferguson, art by Michael Watts, and Gavin Denton was the other one who helped with the fanzine. I'm going to challenge the viewers of Old School Rules to put your stats and name and stats for this monster down in the comments below, and we'll pick a winner once I have enough entries down there to give me some competition to pick from. And what are you going to get? Probably a fanzine is what I'm thinking, right? I've got some doubles in my collection, and we're starting to get a decent subscription base, and so I'm thinking it's time to start giving some prizes away to the viewers. That's it for this week. Hope you guys are enjoying the Fanzine Friday series. Hope you're subscribed, and I hope you tell your friends to subscribe if you have others who would like this kind of old school stuff that we like to do once or twice a week. And until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.